I've spent a lifetime listening to the sound of things breaking. As an industrial consultant in the heart of Greater Seattle, my job was to walk into crumbling factories and tell men in hard hats exactly why their gears were grinding into dust. But after 20 years of optimizing machines, I realized the machine was me. I was the one with the frayed wiring. I was the one running on a hollow tank. My wife, Evelyn, saw it before I did. She saw the way I stared at the rain against our high-rise window, not seeing the city, but looking for an exit. When my uncle Silas passed away, he didn't leave us money. He left us an anchor. Whispering Pine Cabin was a relic of a different era, a hand-hewn cedar fortress perched on the edge of Emerald Basin. It was a place where the water was so still it looked like a sheet of obsidian, and the only neighbors were the bald eagles that patrolled the treeline. It was perfect. More importantly, it was sovereign. Uncle Silas was a man who hated three things: taxes, warm beer, and anyone telling him what to do with his dirt. He had secured the land as an independent enclave decades ago, a legal island surrounded by what would eventually become the sprawling, manicured suburbs of the elite. When we moved in, I felt a weight lift that I didn't know I was carrying. My days became a rhythmic loop of physical labor. I wasn't optimizing spreadsheets anymore. I was optimizing the airflow in our wood-burning stove. I was fixing the dock that had started to sag into the lake like a tired old dog. We were free, or so we thought. The first crack in the silence came on a Tuesday. I was on the porch, the scent of fresh pine shavings in the air, when a white SUV with a gold crest on the door crawled up our gravel driveway. Out stepped Beatrice Vane. If passive aggression had a human avatar, it would be Beatrice. She was the president of the Crestview Shores Association, a homeowners association that had slowly been devouring the surrounding hills like a slow-moving lava flow of beige siding and approved shrubbery. She didn't offer a hand. She offered a folder. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice a practiced melody of fake concern. She couldn't even bother to get my name right, calling me by my middle name as if to assert dominance. "I'm Beatrice. We've noticed some irregularities with your estate. The peeling paint on your shed, the unauthorized watercraft on the shoreline. It's all very disruptive to the Crestview aesthetic." I looked at her, then at the forest behind her. "I don't belong to your club, Beatrice. This land is independent. My uncle made sure of that." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were busy calculating the square footage of my shoreline. "Oh dear, things change. Boundaries move. We've recently passed a Community Expansion Act. Your little cabin is now officially within our borders, which means, as of today, you owe us $3,000 in back compliance fines." I felt the air grow cold. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the audacity. But as I opened my mouth to tell her exactly where she could shove her expansion act, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Evelyn. She didn't say a word. She just looked at Beatrice with a gaze so flat, so unreadable, that the older woman actually took a half step back. "We'll take it under advisement," Evelyn said. Her voice was like silk over a blade. As Beatrice drove away, kicking up dust on our road, I turned to my wife. "She's crazy. We're not in an HOA." Evelyn didn't look away from the retreating SUV. "She's not crazy, Arthur. She's greedy. And people like her don't stop until they've paved over everything they can't control. But she's made a mistake. She thinks we're just another pair of retirees looking for a quiet life. She has no idea whose house she just walked into." The next month was a descent into a special kind of suburban hell. The letters started arriving daily. Not just letters, proclamations. The Crestview Shores Association began treating our lives like a public project. We were cited for the height of our grass, which was actually a native wildflower meadow. We were fined for the smoke from our chimney. Every morning, I'd find a new orange tag taped to our mailbox, each one a little more aggressive than the last. But it wasn't just paper. It was a siege. Beatrice organized compliance patrols. Golf carts filled with retired snitches began idling at the edge of our property line. Binoculars aimed at our kitchen window. They were trying to break us. They wanted us to feel watched, judged, and ultimately unwelcome. They wanted the land, not the people on it. Through the grapevine of the local hardware store, I heard the rumor. Beatrice had a developer lined up. They wanted to tear down our cabin and build the Emerald Basin Lodge, a flagship clubhouse that would triple the property values of everyone in the HOA. We weren't neighbors to them. We were an obstacle. What they didn't know was that while I was getting angry, Evelyn was getting busy. One night, I walked into the den to find the walls covered in maps. Not just tourist maps, but county GIS topographicals, historical land grants from the 1920s, and high-resolution satellite imagery. Evelyn was sitting in the middle of it all with a highlighter and a legal pad. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a red line on the screen. The HOA filed a revised plat map with the county last year. They literally used a Sharpie to extend their border right through the middle of our living room. It's a fraudulent filing, Arthur. They're using it to secure a massive infrastructure loan from Silverwood Bank. They're using our land as collateral for a debt we never signed for. That's illegal, I whispered. "It's more than that," she said, her eyes flashing. "It's a federal felony. Wire fraud, mail fraud, and falsifying government records. We need to call a lawyer," I said. Evelyn stood up, stretching her back. "A lawyer will take 2 years and $50,000. We don't have that kind of time. They're coming for us, Arthur." I saw Beatrice talking to a sheriff's deputy yesterday. They're building a narrative that this place is a public nuisance so they can force an emergency eviction. The harassment turned physical a week later. I woke up to find our dock, the one Uncle Silas had built with his own hands, tagged with industrial red spray paint. A giant X, a demolition pending sign, was hammered into the mud. I felt a surge of hot, blinding rage. I wanted to drive to Beatrice's house and tear her lawn up with my bare hands. But then I saw the cameras. Evelyn had spent the last 3 nights crawling through the underbrush, installing Pathfinder stealth cams. She had captured the whole thing. 2 of the HOA patrol members, clearly visible, vandalizing our dock while laughing and drinking beer. "Don't touch it," Evelyn warned me as I reached for a scrub brush. "Let the evidence sit. We're not playing their game anymore. We're playing mine." The final straw broke on a Thursday afternoon. I had gone into town to pick up some supplies, leaving Evelyn alone. I was gone for exactly 2 hours. When I turned back onto the gravel road, my heart nearly stopped. There were 3 vehicles blocked our driveway. One was Beatrice's white SUV. The other 2 were blacked-out Suburbans with private security decals. I jumped out of my truck and ran toward the cabin. I found Beatrice standing on our porch, flanked by 2 large men in tactical vests. She was holding a piece of paper and screaming at her front door. "This is an emergency vacate order," she yelled. "This structure has been deemed a fire hazard by the Crestview Safety Board. You have 10 minutes to gather your essentials, or we will remove you by force." The door opened. Evelyn stepped out. She wasn't wearing her gardening gloves anymore. She was wearing a crisp, dark blazer. She looked Beatrice dead in the eye, her face a mask of iron. "Ms. Vane," Evelyn said, her voice echoing off the lake. "I have asked you 3 times to leave this private property. You are now in violation of U.S. Code Title 18, Section 111. Beatrice laughed, a shrill, hysterical sound. "You think your independent land protects you? I have the county on my side. I have the board. Who do you think you are?" Evelyn didn't blink. She reached into her blazer and pulled out a black leather flip case. She snapped it open. The afternoon sun hit the silver badge, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop spinning. "I'm Evelyn Thorne," she said, each word a hammer blow. "Special Agent, U.S. Marshal Service. And you, Ms. Vane, are currently attempting to illegally evict a federal officer from her primary residence using a forged instrument of the court. You're also being recorded by 6 different federal-grade surveillance units." The blood drained from Beatrice's face so fast I thought she might faint. The 2 security guards, who were probably just local off-duty bouncers, immediately started backing toward their trucks. I didn't know," Beatrice stammered, her voice dropping 3 octaves. "That's the problem with people like you," Evelyn said, stepping forward. "You think the world ends at the edge of your cul-de-sac. You thought you could bully a quiet couple out of their home because you wanted a better view for your lodge. Well, Beatrice, I've spent the last month documenting every single one of your crimes. Every forged signature, Every act of vandalism, every threatening email. You didn't just pick a fight with a neighbor. You picked a fight with the Department of Justice. The fallout was spectacular. It was the kind of destruction that usually only happens in movies, but here it was playing out in the quiet hills of Emerald Basin. Once the word got out that the Crestview Shores Association was under federal investigation, the dam broke. Neighbors who had been terrified into silence for years began to swarm the district attorney's office. It turned out Beatrice had been running the HOA like a personal cartel. She had been skimming off the maintenance fees to pay for her own vacations. She had been threatening elderly residents with liens to force them to sell their homes to her developer partners for 50 cents on the dollar. The Community Expansion Act that she had used to try and grab our land? It was a total fabrication. She had never even put it to a vote. She had simply typed it up, forged the secretary's signature, and filed it with a clerk she was bribing at the county records office. Watching the FBI and the Marshals raid the Crestview office was a moment of pure cinematic catharsis. I stood on the sidewalk as agents carried out boxes of files and computer towers. Beatrice was led out in handcuffs, her expensive pantsuit wrinkled, her face hidden behind her hair. She wasn't the queen of the basin anymore. She was just a fraud in a white SUV. But the real victory wasn't the handcuffs. It was the town hall meeting that followed. The entire community gathered in the local high school gym. People who hadn't spoken to each other in years were sitting together, talking in hushed tones. Evelyn was asked to speak. She didn't go up there in her uniform. She went up in her flannel shirt and jeans, the same way she looked when she was planting tomatoes in our garden. A community isn't something you enforce with fines and fences, she told the crowd. A community is a pact of mutual respect. You don't need a board to tell you what color to paint your door. You need neighbors who will help you paint it. We didn't fight this to take over your HOA. We fought it to give you your lives back. That night, the residents of Crestview Shores voted overwhelmingly to dissolve the HOA charter entirely. They realized they didn't need a multi-million-dollar lodge if the price was their freedom. Things are different at the basin now. The compliance patrols are gone. The golf carts have been replaced by kids on bicycles. People still keep their lawns nice, but they do it because they take pride in their homes, not because they're afraid of a beige envelope. I finished the repairs on the dock last week. I scrubbed off the red X and replaced the boards that had rotted. I even built a small bench at the very end of it, facing the sunset. I carved a single sentence into the wood. This land is not ruled by fear. Sometimes when the sun is dipping below the pines and the lake turns that deep, bruised purple, I see Evelyn sitting there. She's finally reading that book she bought 6 months ago. She isn't looking over her shoulder anymore. She isn't calculating the distance to the next threat. She's just home. We didn't find the peace we were looking for by hiding from the world. We found it by standing in the gap and refusing to let a bully win. Silence is a beautiful thing, but sometimes you have to earn it. This isn't just a story about a cabin by a lake. It's a cautionary tale about the dark side of the American dream. We are taught to value order, uniformity, and property values above all else. But at what point does the search for order turn into the embrace of tyranny? Beatrice Vane wasn't a monster born in a vacuum. She was created by a system that rewards control and punishes individuality. She thought she was the hero of her own story, cleaning up the neighborhood, one illegal cabin at a time. She forgot that the law is supposed to be a shield for the weak, not a sword for the powerful. So, I want to hear from you. Asterisk, is the HOA system fundamentally broken, or was Crestview just a bad apple case? If a group of people voted to take your land for the greater good of the community's value, would you fight or would you fold? And finally, was Evelyn right to use her federal position to protect her home, or did she cross an ethical line to win a personal war? The lines are drawn in the dirt. Where do you stand?